Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, we are going out for a DoorDash ride. I've been enjoying hanging out with my sister here. I'll watch her bike, she runs in, nobody steals. It's a win-win. And actually, just to show you, so this is the Engway L20, and I'll give a little bit of an update on this. But we actually already had this little cargo deal here on the rack. So it's just zip tied like 1,000 times. And believe it or not, this has been working really well. That bike has been through some things. I've got the Light Rider here. This is what I'm riding, the Light Rider 2.0, and it's gorgeous. I want to give a little bit of an update on this bike and some of the things that I've noticed and what I like kind of generally with any e-bike, what I look for. And there's Emma's bike there. And my favorite bike I think I've ever owned, and I had to give it up because it was too heavy for the back of our trailer. But this is the Electric Expedition 2.0. So this is my sister's copy. She actually bought one after Emma and I's. This is a dual battery configuration, which would be helpful in this situation because I would say, I think you'd probably agree, the biggest limitation to like DoorDashing, Uber Eats, whatever, while on a bike is the range. Yeah. So, and they don't charge fast. You know, that's just the nature of the beast. You don't want to charge them fast, so the battery lasts longer. But let's hit the road. I want to share some thoughts on my Light Rider. She's got that equipment that we've added. Little milk crate business, right? I did take one of these little mirrors off because I can't see out of this eye anyways, so I have to turn my head regardless. But I did add this, and I actually got this for my sister. It's a little clamp-on deal. It's 10 bucks. I'll leave a link below for this because I think it's awesome. And it holds my phone extremely securely. And then you just pop it on and off. Just a little magnetic deal. And it works natively with the iPhones, but this case just happens to have this built in. But it doesn't move at all. I absolutely love this. Let's hit the road. All right, now first up, let's talk about the battery. Because if you don't have a good battery, if your battery dies in the middle of a ride, honestly, you're stuck with just kind of a crappy bike in most instances. And one thing I've noticed about the Light Rider 2 is if I'm in pedal assist 1 or 2, which those go up to about 14 miles an hour, I can get up to, I think I've hit 19, but it depends on how much work you're putting in and the conditions where you're riding. And there's no shade here. But I've noticed that my battery will just, you'll see you can ride for 30, 45 minutes and then it'll drop a bar, which is a big deal when you're out here kind of scooting around. We're just sitting here waiting, all that good stuff. But if I go to pedal assist 3, it might as well be pedal assist 5, which is kind of an interesting thing. So basically we'll use 3, and my sister is kind of a speed maniac here. I have to keep up with her a lot of times. And these bikes are tuned completely differently, which is really funny because my pedal assist 2 is like her 3 on the Engway L20. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. That took a little bit of getting used to, but yeah, 1 or 2, kind of a slow cruise, we're good to go. At those speeds though, you might notice that non-electric bikes will pass you. Swallow your pride, it'll be all right. Big tip, of course, is to make sure that your bike is fully charged before you leave the house. Now, I have a 750 watt motor. Both of these actually are 750, I believe. Yeah, that's a 750 on that. And it has been pretty adequate, I would say. You scoot around pretty quickly. I'm a big fan. I wouldn't do less than 750 watts. So when you pedal on this guy, it'll go ahead and it takes like a 2 to 4 second delay. I mean, there's a good delay. That's not too big of a deal, right? It's a little annoying, I have found, because this is the first bike where there's that much of a delay. My problem is, and it's quite dangerous actually, as I've found, that there's 2 things that happen. 1, it'll continue giving you power about 2 to 4 seconds after you stop pedaling. So there's no more rotation, it'll keep going. And you might not necessarily realize it, but if you're pedaling, all of a sudden the light changes, something like that, or somebody swerves in front of you, that's a big deal. Now you combine that with the fact that you have to pull this back. So if I pull here, I can stop the bike pretty easily. I have to pull all the way to back here, which is a lot of effort in order to activate that rear tail light, which also disables power, cuts power to the rear motor. That's kind of sketch. Now that's kind of sketch because your brakes are working against the motor itself. And now the Engway doesn't have that problem. I didn't notice it. Now, I will say the Light Rider is a little bit quieter than the Engway in terms of motor sound. But that's another reason that you might actually not hear it, especially depending on the speeds that you're going. But the other thing is, I have gone ahead and I've turned around and I've taken my right hand off the handlebars. Never had a problem with this. I do this all the time. So I only have my left hand grip, but I'm still accelerating and I wasn't pedaling. And what it is that, and there's probably an easy enough fix. This guy's getting stuck here, which is kind of a concern. So I basically have cruise control involuntarily. And I'm like, I gotta stop, kind of sketch, right? But it's definitely something to know. Now I will say, by the way, with the battery, I don't have to put a key in. My sister does. So you have to have that key in so it has to be in the battery itself. I know that my Electric XP, I believe the first and second gen, you had to have the key in, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something to know. That's kind of nice, sort of, for theft, but it is a factor. Like, do you want to have to mess with that? I kind of like that I don't have to mess with that. This light automatically will come on because the button stays depressed here. That stays down, but my sister has to turn hers on because there's no physical switch. It's just an electronic switch. All factors to consider, but I always ride with the headlight on. Yeah, I mean, you're not hurting anything by having that on. Now, something else that's kind of interesting here is these are 20 by 4 inch, so 24 inches wide, and I love these spokes. I think this looks great. These are 20 by 3, so you know, in terms of efficiency, I would say the thinner the tire, the less friction's being created. I would say that's probably more efficient. But that's not the whole story here. So obviously I can get a little bit more tread, that's great. However, the axles here are not the same. And so this guy, you pull off this bolt, you pull off that bolt, you pull the front wheel off, easy peasy. This one, however, basically you have these two end kind of cap nuts here, and there's a threaded rod in the middle. So you'll have a washer here, and then a spacer there. Now the reason the spacers are here is because the front fork actually wants to come in a bit. And so I got a flat tire yesterday, was not hard to swap, but the biggest challenge really was the fact that I had to get these in here, right? And this is just like a rod, right? I had to get these in here, space even, and then you have to get it all down, and all the while you're kind of prying these guys apart. So that's something to know, kind of annoying, honestly. And you want to double check these ones far more than I ever wanted to with those. You want to double check these so that your axle doesn't fall out, essentially, and you lose your front wheel. That's a bad day. Mine was you saw it. It was a little bit loose when it was a little bit loose when we went to go remove that. Let's talk about the pedals. And frankly, these pedals need to be swapped. They do fold up, as you can see. Actually, both of these do, and they're both equally terrible. They're just terrible pedals. There's not a lot of grip on them, as you would expect. And I mean, they're lightweight pedals. They're easy enough to swap, but it is definitely something. My foot kind of comes out to here. I've got thicker shoes, wider shoes rather. They're very comfortable. This is not so much, so those suck. And when your pedals are not great, you're either gonna slip off, which has not been the case for me, or practically speaking, you're never going to pedal. Now here is something. The length of these arms, and you can see how much shorter these are, they're kind of hard to tell, but that length actually determines a lot about how much power you can give. Now that you combine that with the gearing. This gearing, not my favorite. The Electric Expedition's right about perfect in my opinion, especially for that bike being a little bit heavier. But this one, a little less optimal, but you can definitely pedal this bike. You pedaled this bike the other day, no problem. Yeah, and I mean, when the battery died, because the battery did die. I'm sure it has to do with the number of teeth here, but this one definitely is geared even lower than that one. So that's something to know. There's a lot of ghost pedaling with these bikes, but you can tell they're really suboptimal in terms of being able to ride these as bicycles when they die. So that's something that I look for. There's a lot of bikes that are more like traditional bicycles, but also have a motor. But these are sort of frames and styles that are set up to be electric with the motor and all of that. Now, the other thing is there's a geometry deal going on. Now, these are both very similar bikes. But what I like is bigger tires, because bigger tires, they roll over things easier. Depending on the actual tire themselves, more or less tread, but you're gonna go ahead and it just feels a lot more comfortable. You usually have, in my experience, a little tiny bit more of a rake. The smaller tires, for whatever reason, at least to me, it feels like I'm more on top of the tire and I'm a lot less confident. Having that tire out a little bit, a slightly longer frame, slightly different geometry, gives me a lot more confidence that like if I go to hit something or go to hop over something, it's not going to send me flying over the bar. These just feel a little less stable. You combine that with more narrow, and I like the way these feel, but they are a little bit more narrow of handlebars. Now that's just something to know, but what that really translates to is I feel more bumps, especially with the smaller tires, and I go a little bit slower. Now I do like the fact though that these are adjustable. So I like the ape hangers. Especially on motorcycles, I like ape hangers. I like to raise my bars up, and I want to have my arms kind of just straight out. And that's something that both of these bikes offer. They're very similar in that way. But with that, you are gonna get a little bit more bending and such, so that's something to know. My sisters can actually go up a little bit farther than mine even. But it is nice. Now, this bike, unlike my, I had an electric XP1 and 2. Now those bikes actually creaked right where these bend, where they fold. So that's something to know. This one does not creak at all. There's no wiggling in there. It's a solid, and including down here. That would be, especially while you're transferring that power, that's really something to know. Absolutely no problems here. Now with the electric Expedition, it had this hinge point here. That thing not only would creak, but it would become loose, and all of a sudden you would completely lose the ability to steer your bike. That's sketch. I think I've had 2 replacements and it finally got it right. That's something to know. Actually, even, so Emma, myself, and even my sister that has the Expedition, we all have the exact same problem. So it's definitely a common thing. I mean, if three out of 3 of our units are doing it, right? That's something to know. Not a problem on these. And the same, do you have any squeaking at all on your bike? The hinges squeak at all?
When you're riding it, like sometimes this one.
Okay, so yours does squeak a little bit. Okay, well, like that. Okay, I think that's actually up here. So some of these things can be adjusted. We put on about 100 miles on the King Ball, no squeaking at all. The Engway, how many miles do you have? Let's see, 253. So squeaking on this, and that's really the only issue, which is awesome. In terms of saddles, this one, definitely a better saddle. It also has suspension built in. That is something that you can upgrade. This one, I like the cushion here, but no suspension. And the Expedition had no suspension anywhere. I didn't really mind it. I don't know why, it didn't really bother me. I know some folks that might. It didn't really bother me at all, even being, and not having the suspension components really meant that the bike was a little bit lighter than it could have been otherwise, because these front forks are heavy. So that's something to know. It adds a lot of weight, but honestly, I think it helps a little bit. Like there are definitely times where I could feel it, but you still, that helps my arms, but all of that energy, for the most part, is transferred right into the spine, right? Right from that back wheel. Something to know. So all in all, suspension, take it or leave it. I would rather have a seat post suspension than a front fork suspension. Do with that what you will. But these guys both come with fenders. Now these are metal fenders. I prefer the plastic fenders because they will squeak and rattle less, and if they get dinged up, these are less likely, especially on a bike rack, right? These are less likely to bend, dent, rust, anything like that. These will just go ahead and I mean, they flex, and then if they just get brittle enough, of course, which this is a good quality, they'll go ahead and, they'll crack eventually, I'm sure, but I haven't had that problem at all. Now, I do like that both of these bikes have a built-in rack. Some make you buy it, some don't even have points for you to, attach anything. And you can see that it's easy enough just to throw a milk crate on there, because that's what we had. I'm not a big fan of the proprietary, M-Lock, or there's a couple different types of slide-in bags, which is cool if you like that. I just don't care. Speaking of attachments, this is something I didn't even think about, which is, although I can attach something on this rack, which is cool, that's definitely an option, there is where you have an attachment point here, there's no place for me to attach my lock, or a water bottle if I so chose. Nowhere to do that, so I could put something on the back, but that's just something to know. I didn't even think about that, but of course there's a battery right there, so that does make sense. Usually though, I'd put my folding lock right there, little holder. So, however, you could put something right here if you wanted to.
Or you could not, because it could fall off while you're crossing the street.
We attached it this way, so it was forward facing, so you had to pull it out this way. We thought that would work. That did not. No, so we should probably attach it this way. All in all, if you're getting something that does have built-in taillights and headlights, I would really suggest getting something, if you can. Our Expedition did not have this, but these bikes do. You go ahead and squeeze and the taillights will light up. However, as we can see, that doesn't always work. You have to squeeze really hard, so it has something to do with the mechanism that goes ahead and disengages the motor and the taillight. So if it's me, especially for someone, now I'll keep riding this light rider too, don't get me wrong, but if it's me, I would not recommend this to somebody that's a brand new beginner to e-bikes because of the concerns that I have where things are not, I mean, it's not disengaging when it needs to. And the fact that like the taillight doesn't, you know, these types of things, those are concerning. Now, if I were to design a perfect bike, I like cargo bikes, but you don't like cargo bikes. You said they're too big.
Yeah, they're too big. This is a nice size.
I like a cargo bike. Like the Electric Expedition 2.0, it would be too heavy for our rack, but I'm a huge fan of that bike. And part of it is, so I've gotten over the fact that like the integrated battery, it is what it is. But you can have 2 batteries on that. I like the external battery, which this Engway does have. Kind of a pain to get out, and you can't get it out right now with this, this box in here, right? But I like that. I like that style. You know, you can go ahead and pull the cables out. You can put a splitter on, and you can add another cable in there. Oh yeah, that's kind of a cool trick. But the integrated battery, it looks a little nicer. It's a little more sleek, but I don't know. I don't have as much confidence with it. You know, that's something to know. Also, it's very important that you get something that is IP rated. You want something that can at least withstand rain. I don't care whether you garage that baby all the time. Chances are you're gonna find yourself in a puddle or rain or whatever. So that's something to know. These guys are both IP rated and they stood up, which is pretty good. So far, so great. But if I were to design my perfect bike, I would honestly, it has to be a dual battery. I like a little more cargo room. I don't care about the suspension, but a seat post suspension would be great. I like slightly higher handlebars. It has to have integrated lights and taillights. Integrated plastic fenders would be most ideal. They also weigh a little bit less. And I like the idea that you can mount something, but no bikes really come with the front basket. That would be great. They both have the option for it, but none of them come with it, which is kind of a shame. I like custom colors, but honestly, if the bike is more functional, I don't really care so much about how it looks. I would prefer to have nothing that folds. That's just me. We use our bikes as like, these are full-time transportation, and we put them on the back of a rack. Folding components way more, and we never fold them. These bikes at 70 pounds, who wants to fold it and carry it anyways? Have you ever folded your bike?
No.
Kind of I mean, it's a cool idea, but practically speaking, you're not going to put this in like an RV cargo bay or something like that. So that's just something to know. Now, cargo bikes in particular are a little bit different because they typically, you'll have a kickstand underneath and it pushes you up there. Whereas lighter bikes like these guys, you have a little side stand. The position of these is perfect. They don't get caught up there. You can adjust them a little bit if you want to. No, it's great. So no complaints there. We're gonna head to another area real quick and see if there's anything out there. But let's talk about brakes for a second because I almost completely glossed over this. Now, brakes are kind of important where, you know, a lot of people say that hydraulic brakes are way, way, way superior. And I agree that they're slightly superior, but mechanical, it's kind of nice because I can adjust them myself. Whereas sometimes, especially with the cheaper hydraulic brakes or ones that are malfunctioning, they don't actually work for very long without needing to be bled or something else. And that's something that I actually consistently found with the Rad Power bikes. For whatever reason, you know, it was one of those things where it just did not do well. They would get really soft. I'd bleed them. I even took it to a shop one time to bleed them. And it's just an extra expense that kind of sucks, and that's not a warranty deal. So that's just something to know. I like the mechanical ones. I don't see a big of a difference, but you know, this has hydraulics and it's just fine. It hasn't loosened up, although this does have an adjustment screw, which is really quite nice. I like having the adjustment screw. This is the first one I've ever seen with that. You know, that's something to know. But in terms of these brakes, it's not a super big, super heavy. We're not doing like 60 miles an hour, so it really, really doesn't matter. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting is if I go to pedal assist 1, it'll take me to like 9 miles an hour. If I'm on 2, it'll take me to 14.6. And then if I'm on pedal assist 3, it'll take me to 20. But I can't, at least on this bike, unlike the L20, I cannot actually get to 28 miles an hour just with throttle on these bikes. Now, there are bikes that you can. Technically, that's not like a class 2 or 3 bike, but you know, there's that, you have to pedal. But unfortunately, this is a bike I just don't like pedaling. I just don't find it comfortable. You know, that's something. If I were to completely change out the arms you know, that might help a little bit, but then the posture doesn't feel quite right. So that is something to kind of look at. You know, this is a bike where you're scooting around. It's a throttle only kind of bike. The pedals are really, they're as a compliance deal more than anything. So all that said, if I'm looking for the perfect bike, hydraulic disc brakes would be nice, but mechanical are fine. Personally, no folding crap. I get it. No, no. I like the more BMX style. I'm a huge fan of that. It also gives you an extra bar to put accessories on. The display style, I don't really care as long as it gives me an accurate range, which is something, and it's decently legible. I like to see what speed I'm at. I prefer not having to turn my headlights on, but I do want integrated. Fenders, great. I like a little cargo space, but more important than cargo space, because a little rack is fine, is dual batteries. That's perfect. I like a good amount of places to mount my things, you know, and even being able to put, you know, slightly upright, a little spot for my lock would be cool. And tires, 26 would be great, but on a cargo bike, obviously the lower the center of gravity, the better. So that's something to know. And you can see how long these guys are. For example, these long arms. I like a longer arm, and these pedals, although they are quick release, which is really great, that is something that would be really nice to have. These give you, I'm sure that people will talk smack about these, but they give you a good amount of grip. I'm a big fan, and that's it. Now, if it comes with mirrors, all the better. And if it comes with a little horn or a bell, either way, that's kind of a nice thing too. So, and at least a 750 watt motor that ideally peaks around 1300 watts would be freaking great. No complaints on that front at all. So let me know, what do you guys need from an e-bike? What speeds? 20 to 28, those speeds are fine with me. Faster is always better, but yeah, what are your guys' must-haves, and what bike have you purchased and love, and why? Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye guys.